let him speak that which you have designed for him to speak, and may we listen to him, and may we see you through him. This is our prayer, trusting and believing in Jesus' name. Amen. Yeah, David Buruchara, you're welcome.
Thank you. Let me just turn on my camera. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. It's good to be with you all. 60 people on a call. I don't remember the last time there were 60 people on a virtual call that I was part of. Right now I'm in the States, and to find a church with 60 people even is a miracle. But yeah, especially a Zoom call, especially that's huge. That's huge. So it's a blessing to see you all here, and I'm humbled to address today's topic. It's can be a sticky one, it can be a sensitive one, at least here, but more so around the world. It's becoming more and more of a topic which must be addressed, and that must be addressed carefully and tactfully. And I just pray that the Spirit will be with us and guide us as we study. We don't have a lot of time. I want to keep time, so I'll be moving quickly. I won't be able to cover this exhaustively. I'll just be touching on points that that God has put on my heart specifically, and then I'll point you guys to other resources as well. So I'm just gonna share my screen real quick, if that's okay. Give me a second here. Right. All right. Do you guys see my screen? Oh no. Okay. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Sorry about that. My internet, my browser's not letting me to share my screen, so I'm just give me 1 second. I have to exit the call and join. So sorry. Just give me. Sorry, hi everyone. I hope you can hear me now. All right.
Yeah, we can.
Pray, and feel free to leave comments along. I'll try give some time at the end for questions. Maybe for those of you who want to ask questions, we might stay a little bit afterwards in case others need to leave. So but feel free to put questions and comments in the chat as we go along. I might not be able to read them all as I focus on the presentation, but yeah, we'll try to get to them as we go along. So let's just give it. Let's give another prayer to God as we dive in. Father, we lift our hearts to you again, thanking you for your love and your goodness and your desire to dwell among us and to lift us up to be restored into the image of what you've called us to be. We ask that your Spirit will guide us in this topic and in the study of the LGBTQIA community and how we can better understand these issues in a way that is true to your word, in a way that is true to your character, and in a way that is true to your mission, especially as you've called us as a church, Seventh-day Adventist, to reveal your character and the message of your soon return to the world and even to this community as well. May you guide us and give us wisdom to understand your will. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So this is a study on LGBTQIA community. This, before it used to be LGB, I think. And then the TQIA came about. So, and it keeps, it says plus because it keeps adding and keeps adding. And so it can be a little bit difficult to keep up with. So it's also hard to address comprehensively because I personally believe the LGB is one thing and then the TQIA is another thing. So we'll talk about that as well. But I love this image that was made by a Christian artist on Instagram, and just seeing that, Jesus desires to save all of humanity, and Jesus does that through the same means. Jesus has one method of saving others, and that's by becoming their servant, ministering to their needs, winning their confidence, and then bidding them to follow him. And of course, he also does that through what he accomplished on the cross and what he's doing now in the heavenly sanctuary, which is that he becomes our righteousness and he imparts and imputes that righteousness to us. And so that plan is not just for you and I. That plan is also for anyone who is part of the LGBTQI community. But oftentimes they don't get to understand that because as a church and we've kind of, separated ourselves from them. And so we want to better understand them and how we can better minister to them. So some of the questions that you guys posed that I want to address today are the ones here, and there might be more that you address, but I focused on these ones. So what is the stand of the church on the LGBTQ community? Should we as a church accept and associate with them? What does the Bible say about the LGBTQ community? Do transgenders exist? Or is it a myth? Why does the community insist on us accepting them? So those are some of the questions you guys posed. All right. Now, again, I try to separate the LGB from the transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual. Why? Because LGB, lesbian, gay, and bisexual, in my understanding, usually refers to sexual attraction. So if you're lesbian, you might be a woman attracted to another woman. Gay, a man attracted to another man. Bisexual, you're attracted to both genders, right? Asexual, it could also be on that same category of like, I'm not attracted to any sex. I just don't have sexual attraction. And so that refers to sexual attraction. But the TQI refers to more so a gender identity. So maybe you like the gender norms of feeling like a man or a boy, and the boys do this and boys do that, but I identify more with what girls do. That's not really a sexual attraction thing. That's more a gender identity thing. So I think that's why it's good to look at them separately. And even the church itself tends to look at them separately, even though, the community itself can be intertwined. Because, if you're let's say you're a guy and you identify as a woman. I in high school, I first met a person who was born as a male, but then they identified as a woman and they were attracted to other males, right? So what does that does that make them gay? Or but if because they identify, that make them heterosexual? So it just gets complicated, right? But for simplicity, let's just look at sexual attraction as one thing and gender identity as another thing. So that's how the church separates them. So the Seventh-day Adventist Church actually has a statement on homosexuality, and it says that, I'll just summarize it here, that it acknowledges that every human is valuable, but then they say in that second line there that sexual intimacy belongs only within the marital relationship of a man and a woman. Now, I believe all of you, or most of you here, might agree with that, or at least you're familiar with that. And then it goes on to reference the sexual acts which are forbidden outside the circle of heterosexual marriage. What I appreciate about this statement is that the verses quoted do not just talk about forbidden acts of homosexuality. It talks about all heterosexual acts that are outside marriage as well. So, or any act that is not heterosexual, that is not constituted within marriage. So it doesn't really rank them. So, okay, so homosexuality seems to be worse than adultery, or it seems to be worse than pornography, or but pornography is better than it's all clumped together, that sexual acts outside the circle of heterosexual marriage are forbidden. And so I like that the statement makes that clear. It doesn't discriminate in that sense. And then on transgenderism, it says that, and we're going to get to Bible study here. I'm just building the foundation. And then it says, although gender dysphoria is not intrinsically sinful, interesting. If you guys hear, if you listen carefully, so gender dysphoria is not feeling like you ascribe to the gender norms of society. So like I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm a guy, or I don't feel like I'm a girl. And so although gender dysphoria is not intrinsically sinful, it may result in sinful choices. So that's the church's stand on that. As long as transgender people are committed to ordering their lives according to Bible teachings on sexuality and marriage, they can be members of the church. Acts of ridicule, abuse, bullying towards transgender people are incompatible with the biblical commandments. So it also talks about how we should treat those who might be considered transgender. So if you want to look at those statements, you can go look at them in detail. I would highly recommend it to understand what the official church statements are. But it's good to realize that even though the official church statements, within Seventh-day Adventism, you might find different Seventh-day Adventists believing different things. They might not necessarily align with the official church statement on this issue. So, for example, I'll focus on homosexuality for the next few minutes. So I have had three sides to the story. I've had three sides to the story. So there's side A, which is probably the most common stance and aligns more with the church's stance, that says one can possess same-sex attraction but not engage in same-sex romantic sexual intimacy. So you can be attracted to another sex, to the same sex, but similar to how you'd be attracted to a woman who's not your wife, you can choose not to engage in lustful thoughts or to engage in sexual activity and intimacy towards that person. That's side A. All right. Side B is the opposite side of that, but more and more people, especially in the West, are adopting this side, is that one can engage in same-sex intimacy in line with biblical principles of romantic relationship and marriage. So they believe, and I mean, we don't have time to look at all the theological verses and interpretation of why they believe that same-sex intimacy is okay, but they believe it's okay within specific confines of marriage. So that's one side, and there's there are growing amounts of Seventh-day Adventists who believe that. So it's just good to be aware of that. And then there's also side C that says one can possess same-sex attraction and not engage in same-sex intimacy. All right, so it's similar to side A, but what does it say that's different? But they can embrace a queer identity. So they might not necessarily seem like a typical guy. Maybe they talk with like hi guys, like they clearly don't seem to ascribe to gender norms, but in many ways they live by the idea that I should not indulge in same-sex attraction because the Bible says that this is not how God has ordered our sexuality. But as far as gender norms, I don't really ascribe to that, and that's not a big deal. So that's side C. Okay. So if you actually want to look up a few people who ascribe to these different sides, so side A, you can look up Jackie Hill Perry and Rosaria Butterfield. So they are not Adventists, but they have a lot of great content, and their testimonies are quite compelling regarding how they basically were living a gay lifestyle. Rosaria Butterfield was a lesbian professor in university here in the US, and then she was living with another woman, and then her life completely took a turn when she came to Christ. And so they talk about that extensively. Michael Carducci is an Adventist with a ministry called Coming Out Ministries, and so he also says a lot on that topic. Sam Albury is also another, he's not Adventist, but he's another Christian that also talks about his journey navigating same-sex attraction, but he does not consider himself practicing gay, even though he has same-sex desires. Side B, these are growing, people are getting to know about them a lot. So Kendra Arsenault is, I don't know if any of you heard about the Advent Next podcast. She was hosting that, but then when she came out as bisexual, she was the North American division pretty much terminated her contract with that podcast, and then she started her own podcast called Imago Gay, and so she seems to be very siding with side B, which is like you can be gay, you can be lesbian, as long as you do it according to you one woman. Elisa Johnston is another one. She's been doing it for a long time, and she actually produced a documentary called Seventh Gay Adventists. I don't know if you guys have watched that documentary. And then there's another lady called Eileen Rivera. And Eileen Rivera is interesting because it seems like she's celibate and she's willingly celibate, but at the same time, she doesn't seem to discriminate against other LGBTQ Adventists who practice same-sex intimacy. So I'm not sure where to put her there. So I put her in side B. Maybe she's side C. And then this is another pastor. It's called Paul Anthony Turner. So he believes in side A. So he believes that same-sex intimacy is not according to scripture, but he also believes that being gay is not limited to your sexuality and your sexual intimacy. it also sometimes means that you don't necessarily ascribe to gender norms. And he doesn't believe that side is a bad thing. He believes the actual sexual intimacy part is what the Bible teaches against. So I'm just giving you that context because these are prominent voices within the church community, and you might come across them on social media or hear about them. And sometimes it's good to be aware so you're not caught off guard, and so you can also better understand where people are coming from, and be able to really study what is being talked about regarding this topic. All right. So let's dive into some scripture. All right. So I want to answer the first question the second question that was asked. And that was, are we supposed to associate with LGBTQ community? So regardless of, I'm personally, I side with side A. Personally, I empathize and see a lot of why people do side B and side C, and like there are many good points that a lot of them bring, but I still think that the Bible stance is side A, if that makes sense. So Luke chapter 15, verse 1 and 2 is an interesting scripture, and it reads, "Then all the tax collectors and the sinners drew near to him to hear him." And speaking of Jesus, "And the Pharisees and scribes complained, saying, 'This man receives sinners and eats with them.'" All right. So the question was, are we supposed to associate with this community? I think in many ways, this verse speaks volumes to that question, because the fact that the Bible itself says the tax collectors and the sinners drew near to him means that these were people in society who already had a label put on them. They were a community. It's like, should we associate with the tax collector community? Should we associate with the sinner community? Like there was something about them that really distinguished them from the rest of society. And the Pharisees, this super religious folk, seem to complain and say that, like, Jesus, why would you receive sinners and eat with them? Why would you associate with them? Isn't that reflecting on who you are, and that the fact that you might be condoning what they're doing? And clearly, no, like Jesus didn't try to, when he had that complaint, he wasn't like, "Oh, sorry." But he goes on to talk about the different parables of the lost sheep, of the prodigal son, of the lost coin, and essentially, what I understood from this story, and basically from the ministry of Jesus, is that Jesus is trying to teach us that you don't behave before you belong. You belong, and that empowers you to behave. And I believe that is the essence of what justification by faith is. That the fact that Jesus saves us from our sins means that there is nothing we can do to merit ourselves associating with him. There's nothing that, if you look at the story from John chapter 8, where Jesus catches, the Pharisees catch the woman in adultery and they bring them before Jesus, and Jesus tells the woman, "Where are your accusers?" And they've all left. And then he says, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." And Jesus cannot tell her to go and sin no more before he says, "Neither do I condemn you." Because if he says, "Go and sin no more, so you will not be condemned," what he has told her is that in order for you to be worthy of my love, you must ensure that you do not sin in and of yourself. so that you can reach a point where you can finally be worthy of my love. But Jesus is saying, neither do I condemn you, because I have ascribed my righteousness to you, and I have taken your sin, and so now you belong, not because of anything you did, but now as a result, you can behave and walk out of a sense of worthiness and love and security in Christ. But how can somebody ever experience that if you never form a relationship with them? And I say that about the LGBTQ community, because if we never associate with these people, how will they ever know that it is not their behavior which saves them? It is Christ who saves them, so that they can now walk in his ways. How will they ever know that if they never get to know who Jesus is in the beginning? And so I'll say this one thing. Jesus doesn't identify the tax collectors and sinners by their sin. He treats them as much more than that. So this is the big thing with the LGBTQ community, is the reason why it is so it's such a sensitive thing, and the reason why they really want everyone to just accept them is because they have made their sexuality they've prioritized it as what identifies them, if that makes sense. So that makes it very hard, because if somebody identifies as that and then you attack their identity, then it's very hard to convince them to come to Christ, right? It's not like, for example, somebody who is an alcoholic, let's say they drink alcohol. If somebody, the ways that we convince an alcoholic to leave alcoholism is not by emphasizing the fact that they're an alcoholic. If you look at different programs that do rehabilitation and drug rehabilitation, what they do is that they try to help you understand that there is much more to you than your alcoholism, that your alcoholism does not define you. And what Jesus does is that when he associates with the tax collectors and the sinners, what he is communicating is that I don't approve of your sin and what you're doing, but I love you beyond that. There's much more here beyond just your sin. So you and your sin are not one and the same thing. They are different. And because they are different, there is much more to you than your sin, and you can begin to understand that you do not need to hold on to your sin to be who you are. And so Jesus is like, let me take your sins and give you my righteousness, and you can begin to understand who you are separate from your sin. There is much more to who David is beyond the fact that he was once addicted to pornography, that he was once a people pleaser and a liar and all these things. Like, there's much more to you. But in order for me to do that, I need to love you and show you that there's much more to you than that. I hope that makes sense. So that's why I think it's especially important to identify with the LGBTQ community, because they also need to know that we see much more to them than their sexuality. And Jackie Hill Perry talks a lot about this. She's like, she's like, when I was gay, I needed to know that a Christian didn't just see my gayness and completely forget about the rest of my humanity. I'm much more than just a gay person, right? But if you keep pointing and treating somebody based on that specific part of their identity, then it becomes a focal point and they can't let go of it, because that's how you've identified them. And so people are much more than their sin. That is Jesus's approach to dealing with humanity. We let go of our sin when we realize that we are loved beyond it. All right, so let's get a closer look at Leviticus 18. So I encourage you to read this chapter in its entirety, but because of the shortness of time, we will not be reading it in entirety, but I want us to take a closer look at some of the things described. So Leviticus 18, Moses is describing the sexual acts which are forbidden, and he talks about adultery, talking about you shall not lie with your neighbor's wife. And I referenced Matthew 5:28, where Jesus clarifies that adultery is not just the act of sleeping with another person's wife or somebody who's not your wife. It is also looking at, and the converse is, the converse applies if you're a woman sleeping with another man's husband. But looking at another person sexually to lust after them, to seek after them to fulfill your own sexual desire, someone who you've not committed to covenantally, somebody who you objectify. This is another discussion, but do you know that you can lust after your own spouse? Because lusting is not just being sexually attracted. Lusting is indulging in ways that objectify sexually, and so it's you're basically trying to you basically reduce the humanity to an object of your desire, and I think at its core that's what lust is. But when you look at somebody's full humanity, you honor the fact that they're a full human being who has the ability to choose. They're made in the image of God, and so you realize that I cannot just be trying to fulfill my sexual desires with anyone. I have to do it in the ways that God calls me to do it. Incest is another one that Leviticus 18 talks about. You shall not sleep with your father, your mother, your father's wife, your mother, your mother's sister, your auntie, blah blah blah. Incest is talked about a lot. Bestiality, sleeping with an animal. Sex during your period is actually talked about. So I haven't looked into that more, but that's what it mentions there. That when a woman is on a menstrual cycle, they should not have sex. And then homosexuality is talked about in verse 22. And so at the end of the chapter, it combines all of these sins together and says, whoever commits any of these abominations, because what we usually see is that we look at the homosexuality verse and we're like, you shall not lie with a man as with a woman. This is an abomination. And so we say, like, the Bible specifically refers to homosexuality as abomination. But the full chapter actually highlights all of those things as abominations. So it's not necessarily discriminating homosexuality, apart from adultery, apart from lust. And the reason I say that is because the carnal mind discriminates sins unjustly instead of judging righteously. I say that because you look at the Pharisees. The Pharisees were engaged in spiritual pride. The Pharisees were probably engaged in secret sin. The Pharisees were probably engaged in a lot of things that, if you just read the book of Matthew chapter 23, you'll realize how many sins they were engaged in. But what they had done is that they had created a culture that unjustly discriminated against certain sins. And that is basically the spirit of Pharisaism that continues until this day, where regardless of the society you're in, there are certain sins which are condemned more than others. There are certain behaviors which are condemned more than others. And so as a result, what happens is that we start to ask ourselves questions like, should we associate with this community? And it's like, oh, okay, we're asking that question, but we easily associate with our brother and sister who is struggling with pornography. That's no problem. Or we easily associate with our friends in campus who we know are sleeping with their girlfriend and their boyfriend. But because it's a heterosexual thing, it's like, oh, I don't agree with what you're doing. But hey, we'll have dinner, we'll go for lunch, we'll go for picnic. I will invite you to church. It's not a big deal. That's okay. We'll easily associate with people who drink alcohol and smoke weed and all these things. Even if, they could even be our siblings, but we don't ask ourselves, like, of course you won't go to the club or you won't go to a rave with them. I mean, some people here might, but you will still interact with them in a normal setting. You will still talk to them. You will still befriend them. You still have conversations with them. And so that question points to the fact that, why are we discriminating in such a way that this sin of being part of the LGBTQ community is somehow, it's just, it's like, what, it's just so hard to do it. It's just so hard to interact with this community. It's just not the same. And to that, I would say that, is that really a judgment that is righteous and spirit informed, spirit inspired? Or is that more of a carnal thing? Because the Pharisees were condemned, the Pharisees' actions were condemned by Christ, but they were very religious people who thought they had a good sense of right and wrong. So they were very strict in terms of moral, moral integrity, but as they thought, but it was a carnal moral integrity. So it's just good to point out that sometimes we discriminate sins unjustly and not by the Spirit, and that often causes us to alienate from people who we should associate with. Sebastian Braxton, one of my favorite speakers, says that, I think he spoke at a GYC a few years ago, and he said that the more holy you are, the more you associate with sinners. Not that you indulge in their sin, but the more that your heart is drawn towards them. And that's basically who Jesus was. He was condemned by being said, being referred to as this man who receives sinners. Not because he himself was indulging in sin, but because his righteous character was a heart that was drawn towards sinners and seeing them saved. And by seeing them saved, he knew that in order to save them, he needed to have a relationship with them. Revival and reformation never comes before relationship. And it never happens without relationship. And I think oftentimes our church, we've fallen guilty of that we forget that relationship is required in order to revive and to reform. Otherwise, a lot of self-righteousness gets in there. All right, so before we come to a close, I just want us to look at John chapter 4. And so I will just, I'll just share my screen for sake of time. There's some comments I see here. Yes, I appreciate the comments here. All right. So I want us to look at this specific story. Let me get rid of this ad. Of a Samaritan woman. This is one of my favorite stories in the Bible because it really gets to the heart of how deep and intentional Jesus is. So I'm going to read John chapter 4 from verse 5. All right. So Jesus, came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour, so it was about 12 p.m. a woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Verse 9, then the woman of Samaria said to him, How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. Jesus answered and said to her, If you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." So here, I think all of us are familiar with this story. So it's about 12 p.m. and Jesus is alone at the well. The woman of Samaria comes. So first of all, the fact that he's talking to her is a big deal because, first of all, she's a woman and she's a Gentile woman, which Jews don't interact with. So she's surprised. She's kind of like, what is going on here? But also the fact that this woman is by herself points to the idea that she must be somebody who is ostracized from society, because women always fetched water in groups. They didn't go alone. And the fact that she's going at the hottest time of the day means that she's probably ashamed about something and is doing it, she's going at a time when nobody's there, so she can kind of be alone. So it points to something about her life, as we will read. And then in verse 11, it says, the woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as well as his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered and said to her, "Whoever drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water that I may not thirst nor come here to draw." So they have this interaction where Jesus she thinks he's talking literally, like there's some actual H2O that you provide that is not in this well, but how in the world are you going to give me this thing that I'm looking for? And so she asks, "Give me this water that I may not thirst nor come here to draw." So she's thinking literally, but she still wants it. And so Jesus is like, "Okay, you asked for the water, I'm going to give it to you." Verse 16, Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband and come here." And it's like, oh, okay, that's not really the water that I thought you were talking about, but okay, what are you talking about? Verse 17, the woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You have well said, I have no husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. In that you spoke truly." And so Jesus goes on to identify an area of her personal life, not just any area of her personal life, but the very want to be. This is her identity. Literally, her behavior in life has been defined by it. Whether she's the one who wanted to identify as that, or whether somebody else said identified her as that. But essentially, she has a reputation of getting with a lot of men and marrying them, to the point where she has given up on the fact of marriage because she tried it 5 times. I don't know if you know anyone who's tried marriage 5 times, and basically she's just decided to, let me just live with the 6th one. I won't have to marry him. in psychology, that is it's not called a problem, it's called a pattern. It's keeping, a problem is I didn't do my homework yesterday, but then the next day you do your homework. But a pattern is somebody who just does not do their homework. Like, I have a pattern of getting into relationships, getting into marriages. And so basically what we find with this woman is that there was something that she was finding in these men that was providing some sort of relief. Because why would she try once, twice, thrice, 4 times, 5 times? Like, if you're not getting anything from it, why do you try again? So the fact that she tried again means that there was some sort of relief that she was getting from these men. There was some sort of love or some sort of affection that she was seeking out from this man. But the fact that she kept trying again meant that she was not getting what she was looking for. And you find that this is the same cycle that happens with addiction. Is that the reason why a lot of people are addicted to substances, to sex, addicted to, whatever it could be, whatever you want to call it, is that there's some sort of relief that they seem to find in that substance or in that, in pornography or whatever, but it's not a relief that provides restoration. All right. And so you keep on going to it, but it's not giving you what you want. And so as you keep going to it, the more it's destroying your life, but you can't stop doing it because it's giving you this false promise of something you're looking for that you can't find. And basically, if you skip down to verse 25, it says, the woman said to Jesus, I know that Messiah is coming, who is called the Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. Verse 26, and Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. And then it says that she drops her water pot, and in verse 28, that she drops her water pot and she goes into the city to the men. Now, I want you to focus on the fact that, and I know we're running out of time here, I want you to focus on the fact that, let me go here. I want you to focus on the fact that this woman had asked for living water, all right? And she kept going back to the well to get the water, going back to the well to get the water, going back to the well to get the water. Just like she kept on going to her husband's to find something, going to this husband to find something, going to this husband. And so what Jesus was talking about was her life. He wasn't talking about any sort of water. He was talking about her life. Like, you are going to these men to find a relief that you cannot find, right? And so the whole time they're interacting, she's asked for this living water and they're having this discussion. She's ashamed about this past. She tries to evade the subject. But then Jesus finally reveals that he is the Messiah. He is the holy, sinless Son of God who is standing before this woman whose secrets have been revealed in front of God himself. Jesus himself has opened up the most shameful part of her life, the most shameful part of her identity that has caused her to be ostracized from society. Yet, he still interacts with her. Yet, he still calls her. Yet, he still wants to minister to her. And I believe that was the living water that Jesus gave her that day. Because when she realized that despite everything I've done, Jesus is still here and he still loves me, he sees more to me than the pattern of sin that I've been involved in, she dropped her water pot, signifying that she was letting go of this pattern, this addiction of going to these relationships that she was not finding relief in, because she had finally seen that she was loved unconditionally by God and didn't need to go to these men to find love. She dropped her water pot and left. And the reason I say that is because God calls us to look beyond the fruit and to the root. And that requires knowing someone and loving them. Jesus could have easily been like, well, this woman, she's dodgy, like, should we associate with her? She's engaged in these relationships. He could look at the LGBTQ and be like, hey, these guys are doing these things. But if you really look at the lives of LGBTQ people, you find that there's a lot of trauma that has taken place in their lives. A lot of them have been abused sexually. Not all of them, but a huge narrative is that. And some of them they've lost faith in feeling secure and loved by the opposite sex. So they feel safer being with the same sex. I mean, there is a history behind it, right? For some people, they're simply gay because of pride. Because of pride. They just feel like nobody can tell me what to do. Like, I can just own my sexuality, right? The deeper things beyond the surface level. But you will not understand or appreciate them unless you actually get to know somebody and love them. And that is how you understand that it's not just about the same-sex attraction. At the end of the day, it is about a heart that needs to surrender itself to God's love and to God's sovereignty. To trust that if I allow God to be the Lord of my sexuality, then God will resolve all these other issues. And so if we cannot show people the character of Christ, and this is my last quote and we'll end it, God doesn't want Adventists to simply be known by what we think is right versus wrong. He wants us to be known by the fact that we reveal his character of love. Because when we reveal God's character of love, then people will understand that it is worth surrendering their lives to him, and God will take care of their sins, whatever sinful behavior it will be. And I honestly think that we don't believe that ourselves. A lot of us don't believe that ourselves. That we are stuck in addictions like pornography and all these other shameful habits, and we will not even share that with a trusted friend or a trusted pastor or a trusted counselor because it's so shameful. But then that means that we are defining our worthiness of love based on our behavior and not based on God's love that he has given to us. And so we have not yet ourselves accepted by faith and lived out the fact that God's love defines us, not our behavior. And so we don't walk out in righteousness because of God's righteousness. We're walking in our own righteousness. And so how can we ever love the LGBTQ community when we ourselves are judging ourselves by our behavior and not accepting God's righteousness and then walking in his ways because of his love, not in order to receive his love? That is critical. That is righteousness by faith. And so with that, I'm going to stop there. I'll share this slide presentation with you, and you guys can look at these resources that I put together. They're just a few, but they help. And with that, let me stop presenting. And with that, let me say a prayer, and then in case anyone wants to stay for questions, we can close. But thank you all for listening and staying on the call. I know it's past time, so I'll pray and then I'll hand it back to Eva or whoever's moderating, and then we'll see if there's time for questions. Father, we know the time has been short and a bit rushed, but Lord, I pray that the points that we've explored will stick, that indeed, Lord, you are a God who knew that nothing of ourselves could merit our righteousness or merit your love, but Lord, you have provided us a lamb, Jesus Christ, to take our place, to take not only take on our sins, but to give us righteousness, that we can walk out the commandments of your law, not in order to receive your love, but because we have received your love, as is evidenced by the Spirit. And so we can point others to Jesus to get to know him, to know of his character, to know that he is worth surrendering to, that people are defined way more beyond their sin. And may we embody this teaching not only in our own lives, but as we minister and interact with our loved ones, as we interact with our friends, as we interact with the LGBTQ community. And if anyone here might be dealing with those and battling with those desires, I just pray that you'll be very near to them and show them that you have loved them with an everlasting love, and that all you ask is for them to surrender their hearts to your loving care, and that in accepting your righteousness, they will be led in the paths of righteousness. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Awesome. Amen. Thank you so much, David, for leading us through this Bible study. And it's now 9:14, but we can open up the floor for any questions, because it's not every time that we have a guest speaker to take us through this topic.